Welcome to the Story Takes Responsibility podcast, a show for companies, marketing teams, and founders looking to improve their storytelling through video, make the process easier, and feel more confident walking into their marketing plans. Our mission is to add value through our decade-plus experience in making video production more than just videos, but videos with objectives and partnerships with brands that value consistency. Our hope is that this podcast makes you more sustainable and budget-conscious in your marketing efforts. This show will inspire ideas and value, but most importantly, we want you to take action towards better storytelling. Yeah, let's do this.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Ross and Josh here from Mylan. We've got another episode for you, and this one we're going to dig into what film type is best for you and your marketing needs. Because, believe it or not, there's more than one type of film project, right? It's not just a story film. It's not just a set of subject matters. It's not just a video podcast like this one. There's different approaches, and there's reasons behind those different approaches. And if I can pat ourselves on the back, I think something we've done fairly well at over the years is not just listening to someone when they say, oh, we need a video project, and us just saying, cool, let's grab the cameras, let's get to work, here's the price, pay us, and let's just film. We really take a lot of time to sit and focus and dig into, okay, what's our intention behind this project? What's our purpose that we need this video project done for? And what that means is what type of film project do you need right now? Because there are different types, there's different approaches to take with each of those. There's different audiences that you're going to reach with different projects. Are we trying to entertain? Are we trying to educate? Are we trying to build retention? Are we trying to build new customers? Go to an email list, get new customers, whatever it may be, get new team members. There's a lot. So Josh, I'm going to toss it to you. So when we're talking about what film type is best for someone, where do you want to begin?
Well, I think a lot of times, there's no real wrong answer, but I think there's a better answer. And it's usually kind of massaging the conversation amongst our clients to figure out which makes the most sense, which one feels the most comfortable for them, and where are they actually going to place it. We always I feel like the first thing is like, oh, we love, these brand story films, whether they have the language for them or not. They're like, we want something like that. And I like to at least help them understand, what that film type, how it's best used. So it's like, is that the usage that you think you actually need right now? And I think that's where the film type application really kind of comes into play. A lot of people come to us and they're like, oh, we want to do something big. We want to start and do something huge. Whether they've worked with video before or never at all. I feel like we always hear this pie in the sky mentality. And it's like, that sounds great. That sounds exciting. I like doing the big fancy, thing. But at the end of the day, our big thing is stylized films that connect. That has nothing to do with how big or how small it is. It just means that let's give you some style points, but let's also make, more importantly than anything else, that it connects with your audience. Yeah. That is the key takeaway. So it's let's get excited. I'm glad you're excited. But let's get excited about figuring out what the best thing is for you and figuring out which film type makes the most sense and how that's going to reach your goals the best.
So before we dig too deep into all these different film types, all this sort of stuff, let's actually break down some of the projects that we produce for people. What are the film types that we offer our clients most often through Mylan? What are the different ways that we can create and tell a story?
Yeah, so I feel like we have our legacy films, which are, our brand story films. We have microfilms. We have client testimonials. We have recruitment and retention. We have podcasts, and we have explainer films. All these different things work together to solve different goals in different ways. And it's what we really call creating that diverse digital diet. It's really what we've understood is one film doesn't check all the boxes, but several different film types starts to serve your audience different ways, and it gives people different entry points. So of all those different film types, each one kind of goes to different places, is used different ways, and supports your team and ecosystem a little bit differently.
Let's, and we can do this quickly. We don't have to spend too much time and make this a super long episode, but let's break down the details of each of those film types a little bit.
Yeah.
So, let's start with a story film, for example, right? What is a story film? Let's break that down.
So this is kind of, all of these live at the higher level, at the, this is the top line kind of produced products, and we have cut downs that pull from each one of them, and I can kind of highlight how that looks the best. Brand story films are kind of like they typically live on like a homepage or an about, or they go through like email marketing or through some sort of effort of, like Google ads or whatnot. These are really focused on mission, culture, values at the simplest of things. So it's like maybe it's an origin story, maybe it's highlighting the process or impact, maybe it's highlighting a little bit of the way people want to feel throughout that process. And this is like at its peak emotional storytelling through and through. The only thing that really kind of tops this off, in my opinion, is client testimonials, but they don't always have to go to that level. So the brand story films is like, these are, really beautiful. They don't have a quick return on investment, in my opinion. Most times this is like, we're going to produce something that can last 3 to 7 years.
Yeah, this is a big piece. We're going to,
They sit on the shelf and they become effective long-term, especially if they're done the right way. So it's like they can't do too much. They need to do the right thing. You should update them over time as these things evolve and shift, as all businesses do, but you can get a lot of usage out of these. They can be really great for introduction. So say someone reaches out in your service-based industry and it's like, hey, I'm excited about this, our discovery call or whatever it is that your objective is. Here's a great piece of content that explains who we are. So it becomes a vetting process almost. So in the sales process, it's really powerful that way. But for lurkers and people who are just looking on your brand, it's a great way to introduce them to your brand and just kind of feel like, oh, I'm getting introduced in a really cool way.
And just to add to that really quick, something that I think is an overlooked value often with a story film, it's not just, is it going to go on our landing page at our home website? We're going to post it on Instagram once and I guess hope it gets likes and comments. The value of a story film can be, yes, it can educate people when they go to your website. You can throw it up on social. They're going to see this awesome, 5-minute piece, whatever it may be. But kind of like what you were saying, there's also this back end value that goes with a story film of if you're trying to create new brand sponsorships or partnerships or whatever with your company, it works in that way too. You can share if you have a new potential partner that you're wanting to bring in for your company. Send them your story film because then they're going to get an easy understanding of what you're about, why you do what you do, just as much as an outside audience on social would be to come in and buy your product or come in and check your stuff out. And in the same way of another branch of this is people to potentially come and work for your company. If you have a brand story film that's talking about the culture and the story of your company, well, that also can be used for potentially new hire-ons, whatever it may be. So I feel like that, that big piece of a brand story film does have these like several different branches of use. It's not just, we got a flashy film that probably visually will look the coolest out of a lot of the things we could get, right? It's not just, we got this film, cool, we'll put it in our newsletter for next month and we'll toss it on the website. There we go. Or just toss it on social and call it a day. A brand story film really does branch into several different avenues of ways to build a better connection, honestly, for your brand.
If there's one film type that is the Swiss Army knife, it's that one. It might not always be the perfect tool, but it does have a lot of different usages. And if there's like an objective base, it's the one that starts to cross into other areas. The obvious usage is to build awareness. But it does have that ability to create alignment. It does have that ability to educate. It does have that ability to kind of pull people in or open the door or, just get people on the same page a little bit quicker. It might not be the first usage, but it's like, great, this kind of checks the boxes for a lot of different things. Does it have a lot of instant power? No, it doesn't, but it is a really good long-term tool. Migrating into client testimonials, which aren't drastically different, and they can kind of camouflage themselves in a lot of ways. They're going to be the straightforward. Let's interview one of your customers to get new customers to come in the door, to create a CTA ad, or to just be something that feels just like transformative. A lot of times we walk people through a framework of talking about who they were before, how they found something, the transformation that they went through the service experience or whatever the case may be, and how they're better because of that service or that company. This framework can be adapted and tweaked depending on what the real objective of that is. But I can think at the simplest level, this is the quickest and fastest return on investment because rather than you preaching what's amazing about your brand, this is a great way. And especially I always say, we create profitable client testimonials, which is drastically different than the company who have 5-star reviews that are literally just reviews to say, great business. That's a review. The difference between a review and a testimony is testimonies have transformation infused in the storytelling mechanism. Again, that emotional standpoint goes a long way. But additionally, maybe it's about highlighting a case study or a hero story or someone who is impacted by your organization's efforts. this is technically a client testimonial, but it's not to sell in the same way. It's to make someone feel, I'm seeing, we do a lot of bigger organizations that are like, okay, we want to really feel small and human. We want to actually bring it down to the people on a lower level. A lot of bigger brands are always finding ways to, like, how do we make client testimonials that make us feel smaller, that make us feel more relatable? And additionally, like, we've done this with collaborations too, which is supposed to be like a mix of, like, let's express why this collaboration is happening, how it impacts this product. And, the initial efforts was like, we want something to highlight, the kickoff of this product or this event or this person being bought in. But then there was this additional buy-in that was like, oh, this opened a door. So, like, this becomes really popular for B2B. If you have this amazing collaboration that you're creating and you're bringing in someone who has influence or a lifestyle to the brand, think Ghost Energy or Brewdog, some of those films that we've done, it's about highlighting the lifestyle in that. And what's happened is, like, yeah, we're supporting the product and whatnot, but what ends up happening is you find a whole new audience. You end up opening the door that much easier to different influencers or to different partners in the future because you have this prototype of, like, this is what we look for in brand partners. So it ends up becoming a backdoor to the brand story.
So let's talk about more on the microfilm side of things and dig into what we have coined the term of subject matters. It's what we call a lot of these. FAQs, sort of, short little bite-sized pieces of content. Let's talk about those.
Yeah, so this is like one of the weird byproducts is, like, when we'd be taking on clients, we'd be like, there's all these interesting elements of your business that, like, don't really deserve, like, a whole big film, and, like, we don't need to do this over-the-top production. But I do think that your whole audience would really love this content, would love this information. So microfilms, the main thing is education, but the secondary is, like, inspiration and aspiration. So it's like, I always kind of ask, is like, when we're filtering questions in this, it's like, what's your purpose? What breaks your heart? And, like, what really just frustrates you that people don't know? Those are the kind of questions that we're doing. So maybe this is thought leadership, and it's like, I just want to share some of my philosophy, my way of thinking, the way that we hope our impact is. And that's thinking really aspirational. There's not really any call to action at all. It's just about sharing, this is who we are. This is what we're about. This is what our goals are. You're really humanizing and getting those ideas out there. Whereas FAQs, fit the exact same format, look almost the same way, but obviously you're geared more towards the educational piece. And it's like, let me answer a common question. This becomes really popular for sales teams. This becomes really popular for blogging efforts, SEO, social media. What I love about these is, like, they're really close to being DIY. They could be DIY. And once we kind of teach the format, a lot of our clients have gone on to be like, I can produce that ourselves. So these become a really cool gift. But it's figuring out kind of the framework to be like, who's the audience for each piece of content? And we can serve a bunch of different audiences. We can educate in a lot of different ways. And most importantly, we're really humanizing the brand through this process.
And just so listeners really understand, how almost simplistic it can be to knock out a bunch of subject matters. What's the amount of subject matters that we tend to usually get in a one-day session?
I mean, we have like 1 hour, 2 hour, half day, and full day, which is our handcrafted. But, when we walk someone through a workshop, for example, it's like we're really mapping out all the different things that you can talk about. And it's really easy to come away with 60 plus pieces of content with minimal effort. And then if you have, like, a whole team to kind of work through this, it's like, okay, who do we need to have that answers these questions in a different way? You're highlighting not only this educational piece, but you're highlighting your whole team in the process, and you're extra humanizing this. So imagine if you walk away with 60 pieces of content. They might be 15 seconds to 90 seconds long, but if you have 60 pieces of content and you release these once a week, you have a whole year's worth of content. And I'm not saying this is the only thing you should be doing, but imagine if you have this beautiful brand film, you have these epic testimonies, you're still getting photography done, whether it's yourselves or hiring in photographers to do things or we're doing things. And you have all these bite-sized pieces of content, and you're constantly serving your audience over and over and over. That's the value we've seen in these microfilms, because really it's like, let's just give it a shot. Let's try some things. Let's see what works. Let's see what sticks. You might say 70 things, and we might only have 60, and I don't think anyone's upset about that.
Yeah. Now, I feel like, those are our big ones. Are there any other film types that you really feel like we should cover here to kind of dig into?
The other one is like retention and recruitment has been on the rise. I bring this up in several other episodes, but this one has become really popular, and there's a slight difference in this. This is about creating alignment. This is about, educating. It's a little bit of awareness to a certain degree, but I'd say education and alignment are the key things with these things. So if you're trying to hire for a new position, this is more of your recruitment. Who's it for? What's the position? How specialized is it? How broad is it? Those are some of the questions you want to kind of ask. This looks very much like a brand film. It looks very much like a client testimonial in the same format of we're doing talking head, we're infusing it with B-roll, but we're really trying to just kind of highlight the feeling of being in an organization. We're trying to highlight what it looks like to be in that job role, that responsibility. Recruitment is the same exact way, only it's a little bit more on the aspirational side. It's more about celebrating the culture. A brand film could check this off to a certain degree, but I think it's good to kind of make those internal efforts and to focus it really on just like the internal side. Imagine if it's like, for us, we've used this in the past, with hiring freelancers or subcontractors. It's like, okay, this is kind of our values. This is what we look for. I always say we hire three-dimensional people. It's not just whether you're skilled and you have tools or anything like that, but attitude is that key area. So it's like that's become a valuable tool by me sitting down and saying like, listen, like here's what our company is about. Here's what we do. Here's the values that we have. And here's what we look for in people. So that way I can send that to someone, whether they want to work with us or not. They get a really good feeling right away. And I'm not wasting time. They're not wasting time. And we feel really good about that. That's what a good recruitment or retention effort really does, is it attracts and it repels the right people or the wrong people. Moving in, it's like podcast. Very popular. This is one of the areas that we see skipped over all the time because like, I don't want to do a podcast. They're thinking audio only. But when you come into the video podcast, this actually supports a lot of efforts all at the same time. You look at producing this high-level, long-form content. Maybe it's 15 minutes, maybe it's 30 minutes, maybe it's 2 hours. But you have several touch points throughout that conversation that you can cut micro content out of too. So it's like you can serve, say, putting this in a blog or putting this on YouTube or putting this, on the other, listening platforms. You have all those areas, but also being able to cut the content out of there, doing like the Alex Hormozy or the Gary Vee style content. You start to create all these different touch points that are around your thought leadership or your values or your experience, figuring out the format, figuring out the touch points and all that. That can be a little bit difficult, but as soon as you start to do this, this becomes a rhythm that's really, really easy to repeat. Like you've said, we batch produce just about anything that we can. So it's not like you have to go weekly, but you could produce a bunch of things back to back to back and then have a content calendar that releases for a long time, go season by season, go ongoing. The ideas are really kind of limitless with podcasts. And the other thing is like, this is like relationship and trust, magnified to 1,000 because you're inviting someone into a very raw, authentic conversation. They can kind of do it on their own time. They feel really safe and it just produces really great content, especially if you really feel dialed in with what you're talking about. I feel like I'm missing one piece. Explainers. Explainers are, the least sexy of all content in the world, but like thinking about web design, this is one of the areas that I feel like we help people a lot. It's like really like we need some things that help support us through this process and steps, whether this is creating a lead magnet, whether this is working people through different pieces of the pages and just helping to guide them. Video is king. So having a simple explainer, figuring out this is education through and through, like you're really not doing anything other than guiding someone, helping them to understand what this page is about, what this objective is about, what you can really do right now. This starts to fall into that CTA side of things, but when you're doing talking head and you're helping to guide people, that kind of fits into our model too. It tends to be like third or fourth on the list, but it's a supportive piece of content that does go a long way and is totally necessary.
So if I was sitting and I was listening to this episode and I'm trying to figure out, I don't really know what film type is best for me. I didn't even know that all these exist. You just threw so many different things at me. How can I even begin figuring out and determining maybe which of these avenues I need to take? What are we telling that person?
Again, I think it comes down to conversation, but it's a holistic approach. Figuring out like which of these are we kind of already seeing. Like if you're listening to this, some ideas are probably firing off. You're probably like literally, if you're anything like me, you're jotting down notes of like, ooh, that could be an idea. That could be an idea. That's where I'd start. I'd be like, oh, yeah, I can think of 3 customers off the top of my head that we could do client testimonials on. Start there. That's a great place to talk. And if you really aren't sure, it's like have a conversation with someone like us and we'll help guide you through that process and figure out which makes the most sense. I always talk about like what's our unfair advantages, what's our problems to solve, and that helps to kind of indicate which one of these film types makes the most sense and guides people in the right direction rather than being like, let's do the brand story film because I really want to do the brand story film. Don't get me wrong, I'm going to push everyone that direction as often as I can, as long as I think it's going to be a true return on investment with them because it is the most fun thing. I do think it has the longest term return on investment, but sometimes it's not the best place to start.
Any last closing notes that you want to leave with anybody? Anything you feel like we haven't really covered in this episode when it comes to figuring out which film type is best for you?
Again, we're talking about this as a project or a film type basis, but the best thing that you can kind of do is do a variety of these things at once. And the best way to get that done with saving money is a campaign approach where we're kind of trying to tackle multiple things at once, make the most of everyone's time at once, and just slowing down, getting a plan together to kind of tackle this in different capacities. The other beautiful thing is like there's all these extra secondary pieces of content, whether that's pulling stills, whether that's shooting simultaneous stills photography with these things. When we're taking a more batched approach, it's not just about getting these film types done, but maybe it's like we need some stock photography for email newsletters or for general social marketing, but we want it to all match and we want a partner that can kind of do that all at the same time. Additionally, it's like web design, making your website a little more interactive or making some like B-roll can go a long way. Imagine we cut the B-roll from the beautiful story film, but it's like, hey, down the road, we want to make like an ad for 20% off or, a call to action of some sort. Well, you don't have to have a whole lot of things going on. Sometimes just visual content can go a long way in social media marketing. So if we can kind of give you, a batch of other pieces of content that you can use, then it's not just waiting on the big things, but it's also giving the micro things and still creating consistency from one piece of content to the next.
Folks, you can make a lot of stuff if you just figure out the clarity in why you're doing the thing. There's been many production days where we have shot a large story film and all the B-roll and all the interviews are being chopped up into different things for social and web backgrounds. And that same day, we're knocking out 60 plus subject matter micro films all in one day, knocking it all out under one production budget. A lot can be done if you just focus in and you know why you're doing those things and you got clarity on how you're doing it and just putting the time and energy and effort in, especially something like a podcast. Who knows? You really could sit down and record pretty much an entire season of a podcast in one day. I mean, who knows? We might be doing that right now. But that's it for this episode, unless there's anything major that you feel like we didn't cover.
We covered it. I feel good.
We covered it. That is it. Another episode in the books. He's been Josh. I've been Ross. And remember, as always, the point of this podcast is to remind you that story takes responsibility.
Thanks for joining us on another episode. If you found this episode helpful, share it with a friend, rate and like, and all the things we're supposed to tell you to do. If you want more storytelling tips and perspectives from the Mylan team, please join our newsletter and visit the website at mylan.company. That's MYELIN.company. Additionally, if you need help in your video marketing or want to learn more about our method, please feel free to book a discovery call with our team or email josh@jcp.co. This podcast wouldn't be possible without all the great companies that trust us, challenge our way of thinking, and offer amazing feedback. We love to add value to other companies, leaders, and productions. Being a part of that journey is an honor. This has been the Mylan Video Production Podcast. Story takes responsibility. Until next time.